Hey folks, welcome to part 2 of our homemade deer repellent. This is the part where we've now our post-fermentation. We've let the material ferment a minimum of 3 days, but actually because of other conflicts, we went about 5 days on this ferment. And it was just held in the garage at whatever the ambient temperatures were. They're mostly in the high 80s, low 90s. So it's done an actually pretty good job of, well, kind of smelling pretty ripe. But now the next step is what we're going to do is, what do we do to prepare it for spraying? In other words, we have to filter any solids out so it doesn't plug our sprayer. We add our Castile soap, or in this case, we're using Jadam wetting agent, which is a potassium hydroxide liquid soap that we made ourselves. The Castile soap is a soap that is just basically pure. There's no additional additives to it or anything of that nature. And so that is going to be our surfactant of what we're going to do to let this stuff stick to the leaves of the plants that we're going to spray it on. Then once we get finished with the mix, we'll show you spraying it on the plants and basically how we do it. We have a nice patch of buckwheat that we're raising as a cover crop inside of our fenced garden area that can have access to deer. So we're going to be spraying that. And if we have a little extra, we may go out and take a look at the pumpkins. But actually, the pumpkins so far they've been leaving them alone. So we're going to concentrate on saving something we know they'd love to eat, which is something that's as tasty as lettuce. So let's get started. Okay, so the components we're going to use are actually pretty simple. We've measured out which would be enough Jadam wetting agent soap. It's about 40 milliliters. That would be approximately about a 1:100 ratio, or in this case, if you were purchasing Castile soap, that's what you would be using, which would be, if you want to do tablespoons, it'd be like 2 tablespoons and 2 teaspoons, somewhere around in that neighborhood. We're going to use distilled water, but if you have softened water or rainwater, that would be the best to use to get the Castile soap to spread evenly over the plant and not like have a problem in terms of it kind of getting bunched up. So the whole idea of getting this deer repellent spread evenly over the plant so you don't get a concentration problem or anything like that. That's why we're using distilled water. This is the cheapest stuff we found. It was like, I think it was like a buck something, a little less than $1.10 a gallon, somewhere around in that Walmart. And then we have our actual material, which we kept covered all week, and it is, oh, it's fragrant. It's got the hot pepper sauce, it's got the eggs that fermented in it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take this material from here after we give it a stir, and we're going to filter it through a paint strainer bag. These are something you can get at a home center, you know, a paint store, anywhere where paint is sold. You usually find these strainer bags because they're useful for when people are doing airless spraying and stuff like that, to make sure there's no solids in the paint. And that's going to be the same idea here. It's going to take out any solids that would plug our sprayer. The sprayer we're going to use, this one's just a typical little garden sprayer by Scott's. It's a 1 gallon thing, but you know, it doesn't really matter as long as you know it's a pressurized type thing that you can spray. And so this of the actual extract, the repellent that's fermented, is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about by the time you take the solids out, it'll probably be somewhere a little less than 2 quarts, because we started with about right around a half gallon. And once we strain that out, the liquid all of the liquid will go into the container itself. Now, if you weren't using a gallon sprayer, as an example, you were using something smaller, and you say, well, I only want to use half of it, I would then probably bottle it up in something you could seal the top with and put it in someplace cool. You probably could keep it for a while, but you know, after a week or two, it's probably going to get really funky. So I'm not sure, you know, at what point where you go, I don't want to use it anymore. We've never had that problem because we usually just use it all when it's ready to go. The soap, as I talked about, is the last thing you actually add after you've got this stuff in the sprayer. So that's it. It's pretty simple. So I'm going to take this, just stir this guy up, kind of get whatever settled down at the bottom, resuspended. That would take into account maybe some of the spices that might, whoa, that has got a fragrance. And this material, then we're just going to dump into our gallon bucket here so that we can strain it out. It's really pretty simple, and then whatever's left in the bottom of this, I just wash it out and add it to the compost pile or something like that. So the straining's pretty easy, and you can see the solids that are left in the bag. And once it's kind of drained out, there shouldn't be anything in that would clog the sprayer. If you really feel that the paint strainer bag isn't enough, you could, if you had some other form of even finer type of filter, you could do that too. But frankly, this takes out just about 95% of everything, so I'm not going to worry about that. And then what's left is the material itself. So we'll just put that in our sprayer. Hopefully we won't make too big of a mess. Luckily our sprayer has kind of a lip on it, so you know, when I pour this stuff in, I don't make too big of a mess. There's a little bit of solids left at the bottom. I'll just leave those for later. They kind of settled out a little bit, not going to worry about them. They would have gone through the nozzle of this sprayer, so I'm not too worried about that. Now what this amounts to, when you look at it, I do have some measurements here on the side. And this right here marks a full gallon, and this is about a half gallon. So it's a little bit less than a half gallon of the concentrate itself. So I'll backfill the rest of it after I put the soap in. I'll just add that directly in. And then we'll put enough water in it to make it up to 1 gallon. So this is, I'm just rinsing out whatever remaining soap might have been in the jar here. Okay, so it's 1 gallon. And now, all we really have to do now is just take it out and spray the plants. Let's go do that. One of the questions people might have to ask is when they look at Castile soap, if you were to buy that, like on Amazon, it's not cheap. Depending on who you're getting it from, it can be, you know, 10 bucks a quart. And you don't use a lot. Like I showed, you know, basically it's a couple tablespoons per gallon. But even so, when you make your own Jadam wetting agent, we'll do a video on this in the future. It's actually really pretty easy to make your own potassium hydroxide soap. And the Jadam has a process that makes it really easy to make it at home. All you need is pure potassium hydroxide, some canola or other form of a vegetable oil type thing. And canola seems to work best, and water, and a little bit of time, and some mixing. And it comes out pretty good. But I wanted to show you something here is what the quality of water means when you're using this soap as a surfactant. One of the things that you want is you want the soap to be able to spread, and that the water, it gets dispersed in the water and doesn't coagulate or get, you know, caught up in other things that are in the water. So that's why using a distilled water or a softened water, which moves a lot of the hard ions like magnesium and calcium out of it, or even a rainwater, has a better outcome when you're using this soap as a surfactant. So what I'm going to do is kind of a little example. This jar right here is our regular well water. This has got the, the hardness that comes with water that comes out of the ground. This jar right here is distilled water. Now what I'm going to do in each one of these guys, I'm going to put in about 2 or 3 drops. I'm going to try for 3 drops in each one. And then we're going to shake it up. And what you'll notice is that there's a distinct difference between the hard water that comes out of the ground and the distilled water, which has no magnesium, calcium in it. So first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to put about 3 drops in. So this is the distilled water. So I'll just give a little punch here. Okay. I might have done 4, but we'll see. And this is the well water. All right. Now what I'm going to do is just kind of agitate this, guys, just a little bit. And then we'll wait a minute or so. And what you may notice starting to happen here is this is the well water. Notice the color. It's getting opaque. This is the distilled water. It's clear. So soft water, distilled water, and rainwater will give you a clear, even dispersion of the soap. What happens in this is the effectiveness of the soap is really reduced significantly by the hardness of the water. So it's important when you're using this, even if you're using it as an insecticide, say like you were using it to, knock down aphids or something of that nature, or you wanted to get a coating that you're putting something on to fight your powdery mildew or whatever, it's very important that you use quality water in the spray, which is either softened, distilled, or rainwater. Now back to the show. Okay, so here's our spray. And this is our bed of buckwheat right here. We've got it, it's about 3 weeks old. And it's just right at that tasty stage. And basically we've got the spray all pressurized up. And we want to do this right around, I'm kind of hiding from the camera because I got a light problem here. Right around sunset. And so we're just, sunset's probably in about another 20 minutes or so. And that's about the perfect time because the heat of the day is off and we'll get, the material will dry slowly overnight. And basically, all we want to do is make sure that we get a good coverage and on the plants itself. And get the leaves well covered, because what'll happen is this material will dry on with the spices and the egg smell will be a deterrent for the deer, period. But if they do decide to sample it, they're going to get a really hot mouth. And that's basically it. We're just going to cover the entire bed and make sure we get the plants covered. And then we'll also maybe spray a few of the pumpkins out front too. So aside from making sure that you got the leaves, adequately coated and doing it again at sunset, I'm really emphasizing that because you don't want to do this when the heat of the day, or if at least as a couple hours in the morning. If you did it really early in the morning, before the sun would get on these things and really start to heat them, you don't want to do this in the middle of the day. Because the whole point is we want that surfactant to cover the leaves and it to dry naturally, with just in a nice, even way. That way it'll stay there and you'll have more effectiveness. Again, this is only effective while things are dry. So if you have heavy dews repeatedly, you're probably going to have to hit it again, and particularly if you're really concerned about it, about every 5 to 7 days, if that's the case. But in our case, at this time of the year, we stay pretty dry. So if I feel that there's a danger of deer coming in and sampling things, I find that I may have to do it every 7 to 10 days. But one of the most important things that I've also found too is if I can make this stuff seem untasty right from the get-go, they kind of get trained to the idea that they don't want to bother with it. So if you can catch it, if they've already been nibbling on it, they may already think, well, this stuff is okay, I must have just got a bad leaf, right? So maybe it takes a little more effort to train them away from it. And secondly, if you have really high deer pressure, you know what? If they're really hungry, they'll keep munching on it. So It's only a repellent, and it's only as good as, you know, the circumstance warrants. So you got to think of your own context in it and what it makes sense to you. So as the sun sets, I'm going to finish up the rest of these guys. I want to thank you guys for watching this two-part series. And as always, stay safe out there, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.